Hello, greetings from Bristol, European Green Capital for 2015. I'm Ian Roderick, Director of the Schumacher Institute. We are an independent research organisation with strengths in sustainability and systems thinking. Although our work is international in scope, we get heavily involved with environmental and social justice in Bristol, particularly with the Bristol Green Capital Partnership. About 3 years ago, the partnership was the inspiration for the project that we run. It's called Prepare for Change, about which I'd like to tell you more. But first, let's set some context, particularly within the theme of the world's changing climate. As part of our Prepare for Change project, we scan the horizon, looking for weak and early signals of change. Over the last few days, I've come across at least a dozen items about climate change, ranging from things like the fact that the Dutch government have been taken to court, right the way through to the stories about the corals in our oceans being extremely vulnerable for warm water. What is clear to me is that we are already experiencing the symptoms of climate change, but also that climate change will be the cause of many problems. There's one quote from the IPCC's 2014 synthesis report that I think is really important. Let me read it. Climate change will amplify existing risks and create new risks for natural and human systems. New risks and amplification. These risks are unevenly distributed and are generally greater for disadvantaged people and communities in countries at all levels of development. So in summary, the world is path dependent on fossil fuels. We are locked in. Global agreements to limit carbon emissions are fragile. Even if agreements are reached, will they be implemented? Without letting up on mitigation efforts, maybe it's wise to prepare for change. Let's just take a look at the complexity of what we're talking about. Efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change imply coping with the complexities of human health, water, energy, land use and biodiversity, and a host of other issues. We use this word model of just 12 nodes to explore interconnections and consequences. There are 66 connections, and you can set off on long pathways of consequences. We often use this in a game mode to stimulate ideas. Climate change is just one of many complex global issues that are creating stresses in society, economies, and the environment. These stresses can lead to sudden and irreversible shocks. The question is, how do we proceed? How do we seek change? There are 3 routes forward. The first is reform. This can be summed up as pushing for change within the system today, looking for global agreements to come into play and solve our problems in a tops-down approach. The second route is to transform our systems, and we hear the calls from many mass movements that this is necessary, but of course very difficult. The third route is what we call de-link to relink. It's a bottoms-up approach of taking action wherever and whenever possible to make a transition happen, one brick at a time to build a new house. Now all 3 routes are of course important, but it is this third possibility that is taken by many of the initiatives within the Green Capital Partnership. The Bristol Green Capital Partnership was instigated by Bristol City Council in 2007 with the aim of creating a platform for organisations to join together to develop the concept and delivery of Bristol as a green city. Since winning the European Green Capital Award, it now has more than 700 organisation members across all sectors and of all shapes and sizes. Bristol has a strong identity as a green and tolerant city and celebrates alternative ways of living. Building a resilient city has this fertile culture in which to grow, but so far resilience is not really part of the zeitgeist. Little dialogue occurs about non-disaster type change involving all stakeholders in the city. In times of stress, conflict arises and social order is threatened. Recognition of this before events is vital, so that different parties appreciate other perspectives in the heat of the moment. The Prepare for Change project started as an idea from an open space meeting of the partnership. Initially it was to start a risk register, that soon became a vehicle to consider resilience. But what was the perceived problem? Well, the future is obviously uncertain, but it's likely to see many crises. Bristol is unprepared. It is missing opportunities. It lacks adaptability. It is not looking out for threats. It's exposed. It is not protecting its systems. It is vulnerable. It is not strengthening its systems. It lacks resilience. And Bristol is not monitoring well the world or its own systems. What are the causes? Bristol is just part of a global system that is under multiple stresses. It can't solve these problems itself. It suffers from short-term myopic views. Individuals plan for a year or so ahead. Businesses are driven by survival needs and financial targets. Councils are driven by political timeframes. The civil society organisations are continually firefighting with little chance of thinking long term. What's our objective? Well, obviously one day to say Bristol is prepared. Bristol is ready for change by understanding its systemic nature. And Bristol is well aware of the global environment. It is seeking opportunities for innovation. It is anticipating threats. It is aiding other communities in its own interests. What are our methods? Obviously, horizon scanning, looking out to see what's coming towards us, is extremely important. We then take those results, the things we find out what's going on in the world, and we do systems modelling. We see the links, we work with the links. We do this through workshops with a very wide participation. Our workshops are open to anybody to attend. We work with indicators, we try to measure things, we look at measurements of preparedness. We produce reports and recommendations. We're also very fortunate that Bristol was selected to be one of the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities Network. And as a city we will receive 4 kinds of support. One is to employ a strategic resilience officer. We will have resources to develop a resilience plan. There will be access to a full range of services from the Rockefeller network and connection to other network members. So this is a very important link in between Bristol Green Capital Partnership and the Rockefeller 100 Resilient City Network. The Bristol Green Capital Partnership formed action groups about getting on for 18 months ago now. One of these action groups was called the Resilience Action Group. It was there to provide an informal association of organisations in Bristol, linking in particularly to the 100 Resilient City Network initiative, and it was to look at emergency planning and preparation, to raise awareness of resilience issues, putting a spotlight on good things that are actually happening in the city, to run arts projects, to raise awareness, to do measurement and evaluation, produce indicators, and to maybe study things like migration and impact on resilience. To run business resilience circles, to set up groups of businesses to work together with each other on preparedness, and of course many other bottom-up initiatives. Prepare for Change is now in its 3rd year, and we have run 18 workshops, and we've had 2 full conferences already, with 2 more coming up this year. So far our big conferences have been about the future of work and the future of people. The next conference is called The Future Fortunes, looking particularly at new technologies. And later in this year we have a conference called Community Resilience, which is a partnership with the Local Resilience Forum. Our first special report is now out. It's called Prepare for Climate Change, and it concentrates on the indirect effects of climate change rather than on extreme weather events in Bristol. Prepare for Change is still formative, but the intention is to build a service of looking out for the city and giving people a chance to think about the future. Thank you.